All right. Did not mess up the intro this time. There you go. Upwards.
Very proud of you.
Upwards and onwards is the only way to go. Hey, Paul, how are you today?
I'm great. You?
Good. I'm awesome, actually. A little tired, but good. But I'm actually, honestly, very super duper excited about this episode. I'm always excited about our episodes, but this one particularly because it's 100% selfish. But it is something that I've noticed. So I'm hoping, and it's probably going to be very sales focused, this one, but I'm hoping a lot of salespeople get value from this because it's something I've noticed with a lot of salespeople. They kind of ask these boilerplate questions and then kind of jump into a demo. And we've talked about like when you should be doing demoing and stuff like that in past episodes. But, you know, I've been doing a lot of calls recently, like really picking up my prospecting. And I've had a lot of, let's call them discovery calls. So you're stage one. And I realize more often than not, I get to a stage where I'm like, first of all, I get lost in my questions. Not that I don't know what we've talked about. I know what we've talked about, but I get lost in my questions. And I get to the point where I'm like, I don't know if I've asked enough questions. Like, when do I know it's enough questions? And what I'm really going to challenge you on is to try to get as tactical as possible or as concrete as possible. I know there's no list of questions and stuff like that, and that's not what I'm trying to get here, but I'd like to get a bit more insight I'd like to know at the end of this episode when I know, like when I've asked enough questions.
Okay.
Challenge.
Okay. First thing. No, it's actually I'm going to stay high level for a few minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a question that a lot of people ask themselves. Like, have I asked enough questions? Do I know enough? And the first thing I'll say is the very fact that you're asking yourself that is a good sign, because that means you're wondering, have I found out enough before I can offer the client a solution? A lot of salespeople don't even ask themselves that. Say, I asked a few questions. I know what he needs. I'm just going to pitch him. And so first thing, congrats. You're at a good point. You're at a good point to get better. I will get tactical, and there are some things that you want to find out. There are some things that you need to know to see if you can, one, qualify this person as being someone you can help, and go forward. And if there's really an opportunity for you to help them or for you to develop the business relationship that you're trying to develop. And it is hard to know when you've asked enough questions. Sometimes I still ask myself that question. But I'll be honest with you, of all the people I've coached, of all the salespeople I've dealt with, 99% of them don't ask enough questions. So usually I'll just say, if you think you've asked enough questions, ask another one. Now, you also said something else that's very interesting, is you said, sometimes I get a little lost or I don't know what question to ask next. And that's also normal, because I know you're not you're kind of new to sales, right? You've been doing sales now, what, for a year?
Yeah, give or take.
You're selling your marketing services, but you started selling your own marketing services, what, a year, 2 years ago?
Yeah, probably. Give or take a year, 18 months. Let's call it 18 months.
And it's hard sometimes to say, okay, I'm trying to find out a whole bunch of stuff. There's certain things I want to know. And then at one point you're saying, do I have enough? I feel I might be ready, but is this really enough questions? So there's a few indicators that you're looking for. And to start with, from a tactical point of view, what I often do show people is I put up some things that they need to look for. The first thing is when you're having your first conversation, your conversation starter, your elevator pitch, call it whatever you want. In that first bit of time, the only thing you're really trying to do is book an appointment, right? Or book a continuation, right? Usually you're not going to talk to someone for an hour on the phone the first time you call them. If you can, wonderful. If you can have that conversation, but usually it's going to be, well, let's talk again, or let's meet again. With COVID, it's usually let's talk or Zoom again, or Teams again. So what you're trying to do in that first bit, you're just trying to book a meeting. You're trying to identify a challenge. You're trying to pre-qualifying just to see, like, is there a challenge that I can help them with, right? So when you do that elevator pitch, which we've talked about before, hi, I'm Fab. I help business owners like you who are unsure or not quite attuned to what the best marketing strategy they're trying to use is, and are kind of confused about it. Is this something that reflects your reality? Then yes, yes, yes. Then you're identifying a challenge. Good, there's a challenge. Well, look, I suggest that we meet, blah, blah, blah. So that's your first question. So you've identified a surface challenge. And then when you meet them, you're going to want to go much deeper in that challenge, right? So they're probably going to try to ask you a bunch of questions. And what you should always say to someone who asks you questions early on in the process, say, look, I promise I will answer all your questions. Write them down or I'll write them down. I promise I'll get there, but I need to ask you a few questions to make sure that I can help you, that I really have some. And most people are open to that. And you'll ask. And the first questions you're going to find out is you're going to go deep. You're going to dig deeper on that challenge that they talked to you about. You're going to carry the conversation by asking them open-ended questions about what is on their mind or what's important to them. So that's first part. I've got a few more. Sorry, I'm gonna talk here for about 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So that's number one. Identify a challenge, and then number two is there a need or a want that you're going to try to uncover? And this is all through open-ended questions, right? So when they answer something, you're going to build on that answer, and you're going to find out need or want. Then you want to find out the motivation to buy. That core why. Why is he in business? What is this all about, right? And then you've got to find out, are they willing to invest? Are they committed to invest? Who's the competition? What's the urgency? How quickly do they need this to be settled? What's the decision-making process? What's the timeline, right? And who's the competition? So there's about 10 of these things that you're looking for. And when you're looking for all these things, as a reminder, it'll help you guide you, particularly at first. And when I've gotten all these things, then I'm ready. Probably then after that, once I've accumulated all this information, then I'm ready to go there. Now, okay, so ask your question, because I know you had a question, because I'm going to talk for an hour if I want.
I kind of put on my question, but I like first of all, because you're right, and that is one thing that throws me off. Well, not throws me off, but where I have less practice on, I should say, is dealing with that. Hey, they want to ask you questions, and often, what I'm realizing, and maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm not setting up my calls properly enough, is that the person usually comes with kind of fait accompli, like they know exactly what their problem is, right? And so it's more they're coming in with the frame of mind that they're vetting me more than me vetting them, because in their mind they know exactly what the problem is. It's like ABC, my staff doesn't have the competencies, or I don't have the time, or whatever it ends up being. And so they started asking a whole bunch of questions to me, and I kind of get thrown off and start answering them. So I can understand a bit more why now I end that call with I don't think I've asked enough questions, because the reality at best was probably a 50-50 interaction, right? Whereas me asking questions, them asking questions 50% of the time.
By the way, they are vetting you. If you ask the proper open-ended questions, the client's always vetting you. He's always seeing, but I think it's a lot better to be vetted on intelligent questions that you're asking rather than you answering questions. And that'll come eventually if there's something you haven't answered, but your credibility is usually more enhanced by good questions rather than in this early stage by good answers.
Mm-hmm.
Although good answers are important too. I mean, at one point you're going to have to answer some questions, and that's fine, and that's good. But the idea is if you're asking questions, a lot of their questions may be answered by what you're asking them.
Mm.
And you want to. It's sort of a pyramid of importance, right? At first, it's sort of what you do, right? What are the problems? What are the challenges? I'm going to use a Simon Sinek thing there. And then it's sort of how do you do it, right?
And so when you talk about how, so what? Fine. Let's say we know what the challenge is. Let's say I'll take an example. It's
not an exact thing, but let's call it like the problem at the surface, right?
Yeah. So that's the what. My reports are all out of whack, for example. Yeah. That's my what. So your how could be something more like how have you been approaching it now? How you've been going around it, how you've been dealing with it, how you've been
And your small why could be, well, why do you need these reports, right? That's not your
Right.
big why, right? It's just, but why do you want these reports, right? And that's your small why, we'll call it. I know Simon Sinek doesn't use that language, but, and then the big why is the motivation, like what's driving this person.
Right. So let's say we're like in that reports example. Well, the small why is like, well, I need to keep track of like how my marketing is doing, but ultimately the big why is like, well, I'm not driving enough leads. The salespeople don't have enough leads. And
the big why is way bigger than that. The big why, that's still small why. I'm not driving enough. The big why is, why am I in business? What am I trying to achieve? What's my vision? What's my mission? That's the big why. And everything in between it, there are levels of importance, but you're trying to find that all out. So even at first you're right. I'm not getting the right reports. I don't like the dashboards I'm getting. Okay, well, why do you need the reports? Okay, blah, 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 blah. And what are you hoping to achieve? What are the business objectives? Well, we want to grow by this much. Okay, why do you want to grow so much? Because we're number 2, we want to be number 1. And then what happens? Well, 10 years from now, I can retire. Okay, so that's ultimate objective, ultimate motivation.
I like that. And then what happens? I know there's no list of questions, but I like that. I like that question.
Yeah, and then what happens? It's a great question. I didn't make that up either. There's a lot of great sales people who use that. And so what happens after that? Why is that important? Why is that important? What is it you're trying to achieve? What are you hoping to get? Tell me more about that. These are the best questions. When someone says my business is not doing well, okay, why do you think it's not doing well? Instead of you going, well, if you had this great CRM, it would do this, it would do that, you do this, do that, it would control your car. Okay, it might be true, but you haven't taken the time to understand. So these, tell me more. Why is that important to you? What are you hoping to achieve? And then what happens? These are all great, awesome questions. And they bring you to, first of all, to ask those questions, you need to be listening. You need to be listening to the answers, and you'll get there. And Fab, I hate to tell you this, but the only way to get good at this is to practice. And you can either practice on clients, right? Or you can do role plays with me.
Nice.
Or whoever. But that is the best. I just did this with a group of people because I do some training with people sometimes, and I think it's very clear what I'm saying. But until you've tried it, it's very different. If I show you mogul skiing on TV, you say, yeah, I get it. You turn here, you plant your pole here, you go over, you turn in the crest of the mogul, and you jump over the mogul. Yeah, I get it. Then you get them on the mogul run. It's like they're falling all over the place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks easy when you see people, especially when you see experts doing it, right? Like playing hockey, basketball. It all looks easy when you're watching it on TV until you realize that it's not so easy when you haven't done it before.
And what I say to people who don't have a huge network of people they can role play with or test it with, and they don't want to try it on their clients and lose all their valuable clients, let's try it on family members. Use your open-ended questioning strategy. Use your questioning strategy on people
Yeah.
Do the role plays with them. Say, your wife, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, think of a motivation, and I'm going to try to get to it.
Okay.
And it's building on what the person said to you.
Yeah.
It's the hardest part.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. And then your ultimate question is, when do you know you've asked enough questions? Well, if you have that list in your head, usually
like what you were talking about before there,
And once you have that motivation to buy, what really motivates you? The key element, the motivation. I want to sell my business. I want to grow my business, whatever. Once you're there, usually you've really gotten to a point where the person's opened up to you and they've said a lot to you. Now, of course, there's identifying the challenge, the need, the want. Are they committed to solving the issue? Are they willing to invest? Have you found out what they're really willing to invest? And these are all questions that can come along. So if the person says, well, I'm trying to achieve this, I'm trying to achieve that. Okay, so if we come back to the issue at hand, marketing's not working well. So how important is marketing in this priority? Well, it's super important because we have the operations, we have everything else, but it's just we're not getting out there enough and we're not being heard enough. So it's going to make a big difference. The machine's ready. We're just not utilizing it properly. Okay. And how important is this for you to solve? Well, we want to get it done as quickly as possible. Okay, so it's a priority. Who's involved in the decision-making process, right? These are all things that are going to come out in the strategy. And sometimes you just find them out without having to ask a question, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So once you have all these things, you usually say, so then you can even say, so I think once you've asked a lot of good questions, first of all, your client's going to say, wow, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. When they say that's a good question, or well, I had never thought of that, and you see it in their eyes, ooh, that's a good one. And you're making them think, you're making their wheels turn. Then you're doing a good job. And then at the end, when you feel you've had enough, say, look, I think I have enough here to present something or to give you an idea. And then you can say to them, if I, then that's where you start sort of pre-closing and, bring an idea for you. Are you willing to go forward? But you already know when they want to get this done. You know what their budget is. You know everything. It's an easy close at that point, right? So and basically you've asked enough questions in my mind when the client's almost asking you, okay, so when can we start? or when do I get your presentation? I'd like to get this going as quickly as possible, right? Now,
because I think was that trick for me, and I'm not one of these salespeople I've worked with, but I've seen it. It's like I think there's a lot of misconception in a way where it's almost like the end goal is to be able to send off your proposal or to review your proposal or whatever your process is. But what I'm hearing you say is like the end goal is really to ask your questions. Like once you've asked your questions, I mean, the rest is almost just paperwork. In an ideal world, obviously.
Depending on what you're selling. I mean, your presentation, if you're selling something highly technical and they need to see the specs and the stats, I mean, I understand. But, your presentation in a service world is often just, a confirmation of what you've said and how you can fix things. But sometimes you don't even need a presentation. I can tell you honestly that in the last 2 years, I think I gave one sort of presentation, and it was more on, what they should expect, because they'd already sort of confirmed they want to move forward. And that's, but again, I'm not selling a technical product. So, you've asked enough questions when you feel the person wants to buy.
Right.
When you feel the person wants to solve that issue. When you feel the person understands. Now, what a lot of salespeople do as well, which is we try to fit a square peg in a round hole because, we don't have enough in our sales funnel. So we're kind of desperate and we're trying to, do the hard close. And if you're there and if you're at that level and you're trying to do the hard close, you probably haven't qualified properly. You haven't asked the right questions. If you ask the right questions, you will disqualify them. They won't disqualify you by not answering your calls.
Mm-hmm. And so, and I know we've talked a lot about this, or at least we've talked about this in kind of our multiple sales process episodes, but obviously you schedule some time for your discovery call and, whatever, you schedule 45 minutes and you have your call and things are going well. And, then ultimately the prospect is like, okay, cool. Can you send me the proposal? And then you're kind of going mentally, or because you have it next to you, your list of things you need to discover still, and you're realizing there's still stuff missing, but you're kind of running up on the hour and they have a hard stop. You would just kind of go about it and be like, I'd love to send it off to you, but there's still a few more things I need to discover or to understand. And so the next step for me, is I need to set up some other time with you, more time with you.
If you don't have the information you need, don't send off a proposal. If you don't have everything you need, don't send off a proposal, don't send off a presentation. You need to make sure you have all of the elements that are going to make a difference. Because then you want to avoid shooting into the dark, which is what you're doing, right? So yeah, I've done it. I have no problem saying to people, so listen, I don't think, I know we had a hard timeline. I was hoping to get everything I need, but I do feel that there's more questions that need to be answered on my behalf before I can appropriately decide on the path we need to take. Can we schedule another call next week, the week after, tomorrow, in an hour, whatever it might be, to continue the process? Because if you're so afraid, I can't do that, they're not going to meet me again. Well, you probably haven't done a good job, and they're probably not going to buy from you if you feel they need to kick you out and never want to talk to you again.
Yeah, and I think most people are open to it. I mean, I've rarely, I don't think I've ever encountered anybody that said like, no, if you have more questions, forget about it. Like this is it. I think that everybody's always more open. I think it's just, again, I think it's like this kind of, for me anyway, is this change, this frame change, where it's not about, your sale doesn't happen at the proposal, right? Your sale happens during your questioning. And so the goal is to ask questions. It's not to get through, quote unquote, this discovery.
Your proposal is a confirmation of, sorry about that. Your proposal is a confirmation of what you will be selling. So your proposal is a confirmation of what they need. If your proposal, again, it depends what business you're in, but if you're selling a service and you've had a long conversation, you're just, it's not even a proposal, it's sort of like just a confirmation of what's next, right?
Yeah, this is what we've talked about. This is what's next.
This is what we've talked about, correct? But if you're selling if you're selling in a pitch, in a proposal, it's not, depending on what you're doing, it's not the best way to do it. If it's an RFP too, I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice. And there are definitely good ways of going to RFPs. You need to find out as much as possible, because often RFPs are not as RFPs as you think, RFP'd as much as you think. There's always, some guy who's got one shoe in. I got to put out an RFP, but you'll be on the list. Just make sure you do this, and that. Well, you want to be that person. You want to be the one that says, okay, you're a trusted partner. This is what we're looking for. We have to put the RFP out, but we really believe in you. So we're hoping you're going to, come up with this, and of course, all legal and all that. But you often have a preferred partner, and anyways, won't get into that. But what you want to make sure is that you're selling as much as possible, that you're finding out as much as possible, and that you're selling by asking questions. You're selling by showing your expertise of the questions you're asking, that you understand the nature, and that the person on the other side is saying, I want to deal with Fab because Fab asked me great questions. He understands, he knows what it is. He took the time to understand my business, and I feel he's going to be able to get there. And when it's getting there,
And so, and maybe this is very specific to me, so I'll try to find, I'll ask you my specific to me because I know it.
I said it was a selfish episode, so
it is a selfish episode. You're right. Don't need to worry about it. When you're talking about demonstrating your expertise through your questions, and I struggle with this, right? Because you don't want to give away stuff for free, quote unquote. But let's say yesterday I had a discovery call and we were talking, and the guy said something about HubSpot, which was no longer true. HubSpot updated their platform, and there's kind of new stuff available now. And so I kind of corrected him. Not corrected him, but told him, hey, did you know that blah, blah, blah? Are you kind of using it now? And he didn't know. But then I'm always kind of reticent because I'm like, well, am I giving away too much? Is this part of the consulting? You know what I mean? So
you're the one who told me, don't be afraid to give away valuable information.
That's true. I would do it on the air live, but when I'm one-to-one, forget about it.
And here's the thing too, is that giving a little bit of information also in a certain situation can help people out. I've had those conversations too. The person's almost desperate for a quick answer while you're on the phone. So, well, you can just say, well, the first thing you can do is this, right? Or that, or what's the issue? And that's often demonstrating that you've got one shoe in when they're already, hey, so I don't know what to do. We need to move forward, or when can we start? You get a really good feeling for when you've asked enough questions. Now, I've got to say, and I don't know if it's just me. I don't think it's just me. I think there's a lot of salespeople like this, but I have a real interest in people and their businesses. I have a genuine personal, if I meet someone on the weekend and they're telling me about their business, I find it fascinating. This is something I like, unless it's really boring business, but I'm usually fascinated by hearing about people's businesses, and I want to know more. So that natural curiosity often carries me into asking questions that matter to those people. And people can feel that when you're really interested. I think we've said this before. When you meet that person, or that, I don't want it to sound bad, but when you're 21 and you're at a wedding and there's a bunch of 15-year-olds and they're bored to death, and you're the person who can sit down, you ask them a few questions about what interests them, and they totally become engaged with you, and they start talking to you, like the kids, the young guy is telling you about his, going to the skate park, and then you're asking, well, what's a good skateboard? And he's getting into it, and he's telling you all the stuff. Like, that's engaging in someone's interest. Well, if you're talking to a business leader or someone who's an executive in a business, they're engaged usually, hopefully, in what they're doing, and you're asking them questions about that. Well, it's going to get there. And I'm sorry, I don't care what you're selling to a business person in a B2B situation, you're always helping their business. So to find out about their business, some people say, well, that's not related to my product. I sell $10,000 fax machines. Well, you're totally wrong. Your $10,000 fax machine is a cog in his wheel. He's not buying your fax machine because he likes it. First of all, why is he buying your fax machine? And
that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, oh man, if you're selling fax machines, unless it's doctors in Quebec, got it from there.
And so, basically, essentially, it's always related to their business. Everything you sell, whether you're selling accounting systems, marketing services, sales services, no matter what it is, cabinetry for their workshop, furniture, telephone systems, software, all of it. It's all related to their business. They're not there for your product. They're there because of their passion. So if you have a true interest, you're going to ask those questions, and you're going to know as you're getting there that, wow, this is really interesting. Now, when I started, I'll tell you a story, okay? When I started in sales, a long time ago, 30 years ago, 30 years ago, I used to get a real passion out of asking people about their businesses. But at that point, I won't tell you what I sold, but I didn't really believe in my product that much. I was just a sales guy. I was just out of university and needed a job. But I really knew how to ask questions. But I didn't make the connection to my product that much because my product wasn't all that great. I didn't believe it. It was a good product, but I didn't believe in it. So the connection wasn't made. But I was good at asking those questions. I just wasn't good at tying it to what I could do afterwards, business-wise.
Yeah.
It's time I started selling stuff that I believed in, and then I made the connection. But my questioning strategy, whether I was selling way back when, telecom services, or after that advertising, or after that software, it was all about the business. And if you're asking those questions, you're going to feel it. So how do you know you've asked enough questions? Well, I can tell you 99% of people, you haven't asked enough questions. And you haven't asked the right questions because often your questions are way too closed. And if you try to get there with closed-ended questions, it'll take you a year. So,
fair enough.
build on what the person is telling you. So build the questions on what they're telling you. Remember those key elements: identify the challenge, the need, the want, the motivation, the urgency, their timeline, the decision maker process. Are they willing to invest? Are they committed to invest? Are they committed to investing? Do they have a budget? Who's the competition? You cover all that in depth, you're ready to go.
Right, and what I like, and it's funny because I'm also generally curious about people's business, but I tend to limit myself, right? Like if I ask about, what's their billing process, I don't know, whatever, I feel like, oh well, that's unrelated, and I'm getting too far away from my core topic. This is going to lead me down a dead end. But what I'm realizing, and also obviously doing these shows, and like we have conversations, but doing shows where we interview people, you realize like when you reach a dead end, well, you just ask another question, right? Like it's not, you're not stuck there. And so what I'm hearing you say is like spend time also just discovering about the business and getting them excited about talking to you.
Yeah. And you're just talking about the billing information. You're just saying, oh, what's your, you feel I'm going too in depth. Well, should you really be bringing up the billing unless he brought it up? If he says, oh, and billing's a real pain, and because the way we've marketed stuff, we're not getting the right kind of clients, and well, then tell me more about that, So your real questioning strategy comes when you say, tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? What happens next? Those are the real questions. Once they've said something to you, like, tell me about your challenges, and then, having a hard time with marketing. We're then it gets you to the next level. Sorry, I cut you off before. You were saying something.
No, that's good. I mean, I think I had covered it, but I think it's starting to make sense, right? And I think, I mean, for me, my big takeaway is more that frame shift from like the sale happens at the proposal versus the sale happens, and I know it's not about friendship, but like the like Jeffrey Gitomer that everybody knows when you're in sales, like he used to say this thing, like people given, I don't know the exact quote, but it's like if all things being equal, people prefer buying from their friends or something to that effect. And I don't think necessarily as much about friends, but as more like if you're the one who's the most excited about their business and you're the one that they're looking forward to talking to because they know they'll get to talk about everything and not just marketing or sales or, whatever you're selling. I think that makes it exciting, especially the higher up you go in the chain, right? Like, a CMO is going to have a lot of different concerns than like a marketing director, and a CEO is going to have a lot of, so the more you can talk about different things, the more you can build that rapport, that relationship, and be quote unquote friendly, the more chances you are of running away with the business.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to be a stickler, but I'm not sure. Is it friendly? I guess it's friendly, but it's not. You're not developing necessarily friendship. You're developing an interest in what they're doing. I see it more as.
I meant friendly more in terms of like, because I mean, we've all been there. You're kind of like, you have a demo with a salesperson, and you just don't want to do it because it's going to be all their stuff, and it's just. But then you have these great salespeople, and you're like, you feel a rapport with them. I mean, I guess friendly is not the best term to use.
You just said building rapport.
But it's like, it's almost beyond, like, it's not the building rapport in the way that you would, like, I don't know, a lot of sales blogs and all that, it feels sometimes over, like you're engineering this rapport building. But the reality is more how you say, like, if somebody on the weekend would talk to you about their business, you'd be genuinely interested.
Well, I want to challenge you
with your call, right?
I want to challenge you on what you just said.
Yes.
You are engineering a situation where you're building a rapport. And the reason you're doing that, you might have true interest. Now, if you're an honest person, you have true interest, and the sincerity will flow through, and that'll help you a lot. But you're still engineering the situation where you're sitting down and you're asking questions to get that person to open up so that you can find out more, so you can help them. And I even tell them at the beginning of the process, listen, I have a lot of questions to ask you. I'm going to answer all your questions, but I need to find out if there's a fit, and I need to find out what it is I can do for you. So do you mind if I ask you these questions? No, of course, go ahead. And then, so you are engineering that situation, Whereas on the weekend, at a wedding, wherever, when you're meeting someone new, it's a little more natural usually. You're not saying to them, hey, for me to understand you as a person, I need to ask you all these questions.
Okay, fair enough. But I mean, the context is different too, right? I mean, you meet somebody at a wedding.
Yeah.
It's usually less of a, when you're talking to a salesperson, everybody comes to that call with all these walls and whatever bulletproof vests and stuff like that, and these shelter all around them. So there is, you're right, there is that engineering. I think what I meant it more in a pejorative term, where it's like, oh, you're trying to like trick them
or manipulate. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, manipulate. Yeah, that would be the right.
But if we take the positive side of manipulation, you're manipulating the conversation so that it's more about them than about you. So that's true. You want to push the. Now, if the person's really insisting on knowing a lot about you, of course you'll open up. Like if you have a really pushy client says, hey, look, hey, no, you got to answer my questions now. Say, okay, fair enough, and then you'll answer the questions. First of all, you're finding out what type of character the person is, but you're seeing way more quickly what the options are and what type of person you're dealing with, and you're still going to ask those open-ended questions. You're still going to get there, and like I said before, those key questions, usually the great questions are, what happens next? Why is that important? And tell me more. Those are the really, but and the why is that important, or what happens next, is often, in my experience, the what happens next is the one where I've gotten the most like, oh, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. That's a good question.
Right.
And it's probably the simplest question in the world. And if you just put yourself in that mindset of what happens next, the example is, oh, we're all going, we're all running the marathon on da-da-da-da. Okay, well, why are you doing the marathon? Well, it's important. Okay. And what happens next? It just makes people think. It puts them in that state of mind. And so if you don't have a few of those aha moments, if your client doesn't get a few of those, oh wow, but if he gets a few of those, oh, that's a good question. Oh wow, that's great. Then you're more likely to have built the kind of rapport and made them understand that you can really make a difference, right?
I love it.
Are we done?
I think that was a good wrap up.
You know what I really want to do?
Aha moments.
You know what we should really do now?
Right.
We should role play.
Role play. We could role play. I have a hard stop soon, but we could role play for about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Well, we don't have to do it now, but I think we should do one. We should do.
That would be a great episode on its own.
Yeah. Follow up is the role play to Fab asking questions, and we'll set it up. So I'll be the client you want me to be. I'll have some information. We'll set it up so that it's entertaining for you guys. It's important because I think that's where you have to. I'm saying this to everyone. I'm saying this to me. I'm not excluded from this. I think we all need to practice, and we all need to do it. So again, right now it's like I've sort of shown you how to mogul ski. Now you have to go and try to mogul ski.
Mogul ski, right? Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Fab.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Afternoon, evening. Bye.